everybody. I'm just gonna hold for a second while I wait for everybody to join the room. But what day is it? Oh my gosh, I don't even know the day of the week. Happy Monday to everybody. And welcome. I'm home right now, which is really cool. I've been on tour for the last 2 months and it feels so good to be home. So just anyone who came out to the shows, thank you so much for being there. Everybody's coming in. I see all the hearts.
Hey Becca, should I turn off the camera? Does it matter?
And then there's Darren, everybody.
Hey, hello. Sorry, technical fun stuff.
Hey, you know what? We're all still learning how to use this. It's like a new feature, so it's just a big grand experiment. So thanks for taking the time to be on this and experiment with me on it.
Of course, thank you for having me. I feel like digital stuff, especially when recording in this modern age, it's like the airport. You know, I do it all the time. I've gone a bunch of times, but no matter what, there's going to be some kind of weird obstacle that I did not anticipate, and you'd think I'd be really, really good at it. But no, there's always something. So we're here now. We made it. The flight is taken off. We are now cruising at 30,000 feet.
This is a great analogy. I'm really liking where you're taking this. And it is funny about the airport. I always get so like embarrassed when I left a water bottle or something in my bag.
Yeah,
I'm just
rookie
like,
move. You're like, how is this possible?
Mistake. And I want to turn to them and be like, I fly a lot. I can do this. I promise.
I know. I feel I think I've probably even like lied if I've had a mistake that I was so embarrassed by. Like if there's a water bottle in your thing that you just forgot about. Like I feel like you caught me with like drugs or some kind of contraband. I'm like it's not mine. It's my friend's. My friend put it in there.
It's a prank. Sorry.
It's a prank. I'm sorry. You caught me on a bad day. I know. I just because you live in airports too, right? I mean, maybe a little less this past year and a half, but yeah.
For sure. It's like you've traveled enough that you feel like we should all be pros at it by now. I should be able to do this with my eyes closed, and yet still the water bottle every other time.
Still every other time. That's true. Well, you know, we're not always bad in 1,000, but I definitely do have I'm very much like a maximization life hack chasing like fiend. You know, I'm kind of a life hack junkie with airports and, you know, knowing how to beat this and doing that. I could write a mini book on all my little travel airport sort of tricks of the trade, simply because, you know, I get it, but just spending so much time at them. But one of the chapters of that non-existent book would be every now and then leaving a water bottle in your bag. So anyway, we're here. Metaphor has taken off. We're good.
Amazing. Well, I'm curious because I feel like I'm a little bit the opposite. I should be that person that learns all the cool life hacks that saves you tons of time. And yet I'm still the person that kind of will take the long route just because that's what I've done before. So give me your best airport hack. Like if you could just say your favorite one airport hack.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't even know where to begin because there's the airport hack, there's the plane hacks, there's I generally try to avoid checking a bag in, but it depends what airline I'm flying into, what city I'm going to. I will say, I don't know, just off the top of my head, because there's so many, something that I like to do after, if I do check a bag, nowadays, because they scan your bag in and out of the airport that you're in, that if you use the app of whatever airline you fly, you'll be notified once the bag has reached the carousel. Right. So what I generally like to do is, if again I avoid doing it, but if I have to wait for a bag, I don't do that thing where you walk to the carousel and then wait and sit around and get even more antsy with trying to leave. I will just go for a walk.
Okay.
I will walk around the terminal up and down because, you know, conceivably you've been sitting for several hours, and I like to get the blood flow back in my legs because I don't want to have to go somewhere and just sit for a little longer, especially if you have to get in a car of some kind to go to your, you know, residence. So I try and just walk and enjoy myself, and maybe I'll just like go, you know, read a magazine or something, and I'll do it standing. I'll just kind of like not sit for another half hour or whatever it is, and I'll just wait till the bags get there. So when I get the little ding that my bag is there, then I go to the baggage claim. I pick it up almost immediately, and then I go on my way.
Nice.
Um,
Okay, so if you
yeah,
do ever write this book, I will read it because that's a really just simple,
it's
ingenious
a simple little thing, man. I'm
thing that
also a
will.
big believer in taxi cabs. I know people are in the rideshare
Mhm.
renaissance right now, but never underestimate the power of a local taxi.
Okay.
Obviously, it varies from city to city, but sometimes you'll wait like 20 minutes for an Uber or a Lyft when you could just get into a cab and pay like $2 more. But anyway, this
Amazing.
is more of a little preview. I don't know if people know this, but they're actually listening to a preview of my shitty life hack books. I can't say that word. Books. Oops.
Hey, you guys heard it here first. Life hack book coming soon. But this isn't. We're not just going to talk about airport hacks today. Darren Criss, for all of you who know him, you know this, but he is a musician, an actor, a singer, a dancer, a writer, and I mean, you just do so much. And now I know you're also great at little life hacks. But being someone who is so diversely talented, I am curious, do you find that one of those things that you do is like what you like to be known for, or that's like your main thing, or do you feel like you're just kind of spread across the board equally?
It's funny. You sound like me. I ask this question with people all the time. I have a I mean, while I'm here, I have a similar thing where I have a podcast where I talk to multi-hyphenates like yourself, and I always ask that same question. I always wonder what like the through line is, and
Mm-hmm.
I ask it from so many other people that I don't often ponder about it myself. But I'm not in control of what people know me for, and part of me is somewhat proud of the I guess I don't want to say confusion, but the inability to pin it down. There was been periods of my life where, I mean, depending what chapter I've been in, but there's been periods where people would be surprised that I was an actor, and then there have been other periods where people were surprised that I was a musician, and
Mm.
that kind of pivoting is exciting to me because it means at some point I've convinced you of one or the other.
Oh, I love that.
But what it does also mean, the flip side of that is that I have also concurrently perhaps not represented another part of me as much as I would like to. So
Hmm.
it keeps a healthy balance of being proud of showing up for one thing, but being reminded that there's another thing that I'd also like to put out there. So yeah, I'm not totally in control of that. I mean, I'm kind of halfway there, but the thing that I think a lot of artists who do a lot of things, or actually any artist, period, even if you do one thing,
Hmm.
it's a constant renegotiation between, presenting what you would like to present of yourself and what people are willing to accept you as. And that line kind of toes back and forth to varying degrees. And if you can kind of be right in the middle, that's a pretty sweet spot. But that's a pretty hard thing to accomplish. So all you
Hmm.
can do is just put out whatever you got and hope that people will accept it and at some level. If that makes any sense. I think it
Absolutely.
does.
And it's kind of a nice way you put it that you're like, I can't control what anybody thinks of me. And like, if only I could remember that all the time. Like, so often I think we feel this need to control the narrative, but all you can control is your side of it. And then being able to sit back and be like, well, this is how I see myself. But, you know, everybody's got a different perspective. I can't control how they see me. I think that's a really nice, like, kind of taking some pressure off to think that way.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I mean, I can think of a counter argument to just about everything that I've just said, but for the most part, there is a certain freedom in realizing that,
Yeah.
yeah, you really are just an ant crawling around on a rock, and you have no control over the way the other ants walk around the same rock. So I don't. Yeah, I suppose there is a degree of liberation in that thought because there's really, even if I had laser Jedi-like precision of matching the way that I saw myself to other people, I still can't control people's experiences of the world. So like even the
Mm-hmm.
lens through which they would perceive a hyper specific version of me would still be somewhat skewed because
Yeah.
light bends, so the prism of people's experiences would still skew slightly off from what I would desire them to experience me as. So yeah, again, I mean, I'm being extremely heady about this, but it's just, all you can do is be yourself and be happy with that and just pray that other people are somewhat happy with it as well.
Yeah, well, and it's so true. I always try to remind myself that like life isn't meant to be taken so personal, and you can't take everything so personal, because really life is pretty much a mirror. Like you see in other people like some kind of version of what you're projecting and vice versa. And so like when you stop trying to control it, it's a lot of like, oh, like you can't, because people are seeing a mirror of whatever they're projecting. Like nobody's going to like everybody, no one's going to like everything, and
Right.
letting go of that is kind of nice. Um, Now, I have a question for you. So, since you're such a multifaceted artist, that sometimes, and from my experience, it comes at a cost, because we only have so much brain power to devote to one or any of our disciplines. So, do you feel like that has been a hindrance at all to have so many different skills and interests? And do you think it's kept you from being as proficient as you want in something? Or do you find that it is amazing and that it has been everything and extremely helpful to be super diverse?
Oh, it's a curse. It's a curse for sure.
Yeah.
It's a hindrance because like I am envious of those who can kind of hone in on one thing. But then again, even if I did one thing, I'm the type of person that can only see what I'm not doing.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of artists feel that way. So no matter what, there's going to be a degree of, oh man, like I'm not doing enough, or I'd rather be doing this. And I know a lot of artists, who are hungry and industrious will always find, holes in their output. Like even the artists that we love, like people that we go, God, they're so prolific. Like I can't believe they would
Hmm.
say that. But it seems to be a pretty consistent thing. And it's what drives us all. So, there's a great Ira Glass quote that that your taste will always be in front of your ability. There's only so much
Mm.
that you can really catch up to. So there's also I'm going to misquote it because it's translated from Japanese, and I'm sure it sounds much maybe funnier or perhaps more poetic in his language. But Miyazaki, Hayao Miyazaki, one of the most prolific filmmakers in the world, like said once that like every project that he works on is like an antidote to save him from the curse of the last thing that he just did. And
Ooh.
while that seems really grave, and I'm misquoting it incredibly, this notion of like you have to just keep doing stuff just so you can somehow like rectify the pangs of what you didn't do the time before. So I mean, look, like I keep a lot of plates spinning, and that does take its toll, as you said. It takes a toll because, inevitably another one will be on the verge of falling off, or lose momentum, and so you have to run around constantly. And it does take its toll. I mean, for everything that I do, I go, oh man, like what would have, how much more energy could we put in this if I didn't have to tend to all these other spinning
Right.
plates? But at the flip side, and I think about this all the time, I wonder if in another universe, had I just focused on the one thing, if I had doubled down, tripled down on one pathway, volumetrically, would I have more content? What if I just decided to be a dude in movies? Would I have a long list of films and a long resume? If I just did the music thing, would I have, I don't know, like way more albums, and like who knows what degree of success they would have, but just volumetrically, would I have more content? And while I think the answer might be yes, it would have come at the cost of like, yeah, but I wouldn't have gotten to do all the other stuff that I have done. So like even though the amount of each thing is lower, the breadth and spectrum of those things is wide reaching, and I'm proud of that. And like that is a
Yes.
tax that I'm willing to pay, because I don't know a lot of other people who get to do that, and who have the kind of, dare I say, insane and almost like impractical wherewithal to keep it up. Like it's not for everybody. And as I get older and realize my own, limits and own strengths, I go, this is kind of how I'm built. And if I was to do it any other way, I would be sort of like not honoring the things that I think make me unique.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is a give and take. It definitely is a double-edged sword. But to answer a question, I was sort of thinking about the first question you said about what kind of connects all these things. Is at the end of the day, to me, I'm a communicator. And
Mm.
I'm a storyteller. I love. We were talking just briefly before this started. Like, I'm a great lover of languages, and love. I'm clearly a talkative guy. I love talking to people. I'm was not built for the social media age, which is all about brevity and
Mm-hmm.
lack of context, where
Yes.
I'm all about
Same.
like hyper specificity, long conversations, kneading the dough, understanding each other, understanding where you're coming from, hoping to get you to understand where I'm coming from. Like this is all stuff that I love. So any avenue I can walk down to maximize that communication is like my calling. So sometimes that's through, you know, acting and through some kind of narrative, certainly through music, the international language, anything that I can do to connect, you know, two people together, two ideas together. I just like dot connecting as much as humanly
Mm.
possible before I like check out of this planet. Like
Yeah.
that's what connects all of it to me.
That's so cool. You said so many cool things in all of that. I loved how first off you started with saying, well, it's definitely a bit of an insanity that it takes to be this kind of multi-talented, multifaceted person with all these different interests and the ability to jump back and forth. And but there is something that drives a certain kind of artist. Like you sound very much like my brain, the way you talk.
Oh
Um,
gosh. I don't know if that's a good thing
right,
or a bad
so
thing.
I empathize, but this idea of like keeping different plates spinning and watching one fall off as you jump to grab it, that's just such a relatable thing. And it's like I remember years ago I made the choice, like the specific choice, to end the route of trying to be the best classical violinist in the world. And I decided I was rather going to be this multi-dimensional, quirky violinist that could have time to make costumes and make cool music videos and write the music and, like all these different things, invest in social media. And that was very much like a realization that like I cannot do both. I can't be the best violinist in the world and still kind of go after all these different interests. But at the end of the day, it was kind of like, what makes me happy as an artist? Like, do I want to be the best? And for some people I think the answer is yeah, I want to do one thing. And others of us it's like, no, I need to switch it up. I need to try different things. And I used to kind of be ashamed of that a little bit, like ashamed at my violin ability. I used to, because I'm definitely not anywhere near the best violinist in the
Oh yeah,
world.
it's imposter syndrome
Impossible.
is a huge
Yeah.
thing. Like I have that. I mean, every artist has it as well. But something that I tell myself, I'll add it to my list of quotes for said book one day. But I have all these like little mantras that I always have to remind myself. And one of my lines is like, you know, I'll never be my heroes, but my heroes will never be me. And like
Yeah.
it's like impossible. It's like all of the, like we both grew up playing the violin, which is something I would love to get into. But
Right.
I you know, there's a level of skill that you and I can recognize, like technically, that we simply do not have,
Hmm.
that I think people confuse with like, oh no, but you're good. I'm like, I'm not saying we're not good. I'm just saying I
Right.
just cannot do what this person does, and that kind of kills me inside. So then you kind of have to think, okay, what can I do that that person can't do? And like, I think your ingenuity with costumes and making this kind of brand for yourself as this cool, you know, like violinist is a unique lane. Like, I mean, it's semantics, right? Like you're talking like who's the best violinist. I mean, already that is a matter, that's a subjective like discussion of semantics, because there's like different violinists that are known for different things, just like there are different athletes and different, you know, directors that have different skill sets. It's like best is what does that even mean? So like in your lane of being Lindsey Stirling, like you know, I don't know why I'm quoting so many famous people, but like, you know, Oscar Wilde said it best. It's like, you know, be yourself. Everybody else is taken. You know,
Yeah.
like you have to do the thing that makes you you. And I think you did an extraordinary job of that. But like it
Oh,
sounds
thank
to
you.
me that you had to consciously make that decision, because when you're younger, you just want to be, all you can base your output on is who you see doing it. And so you want to kind of be like those people, but then you reach a point when you're like, I have to just do whatever the F is my own thing.
Hmm.
And that's hard to do, because then you're like, well, what is my thing? Like I've had a hard time figuring that out myself. So I admire that choice that you've came across, you know, because it did well for you. It's amazing that the second, and this happens with a lot of artists. I've seen this time and time again, and it is such a beautiful constant in the algorithm of like artists being, you know, reaching a successful point in their careers. There is this inevitable constant of like the closer the artist goes to being themselves, like the more of a wingspan they receive. It's not always true, but it does happen more oftentimes than not, where, you know, when they're trying to service another thing, it just doesn't take off. And the second they say, you know what, I'm just going to do that, I'm going to do me, and then it sticks out because it's, you know, because you're the only one, you know.
Right. And it's also interesting how sometimes we think that, oh, if I'm really generic and I, you know, or if I broaden myself, then I'll appeal to more because I'm being more appealing in different ways. But yet it's almost like the more specific you get with yourself, and the more, you know, like you said, turn to what makes you you, and the more specific you get, the more people gravitate to that specificity, and that, you know, because that's unique. And you know, I remember I used to think of it in such a bad term. I was like, I'm like a jack of all trades. But, you know, that quote that's often so, you know, commonly misquoted, it's a jack of all trades is a master of none.
Yeah.
But oftentimes better than a master of one. You know, so it's interesting to think that it can be a curse, it can be a blessing, but it's all about what makes you happy, what makes you the most you. And, you know, and I think that your career, just hearing the way you talk about what you do, it's like, inevitably you obviously made the right choice, as much as we can look at alternate realities sometimes. But, you know, it's like, yeah, for you, and I look back at it and like, for me, I'm grateful that I gave up one thing to be able to do another, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get, yeah, you don't really get to know that unless, I mean, we're talking from a place of like extraordinary luck and privilege, and you know, reflecting on the what ifs come with a huge grain of salt, which is like, obviously I'm very pleased with how things have worked out, but, you know, there's always that what if factor. But yeah, man. We're crazy.
Yeah. I'm also curious. So we talked a little bit about, you know, I asked you at the very beginning, what did you think was your kind of through line, or what do you want to be known for? But I'm also curious, aside from like what skill you maybe want to be known for, what skill do you find the most enjoyable, the hardest / most frustrating, and what's the one you're most proud of? So 3 things. What skill that you have do you find you enjoy the most? Which one is the hardest? And which one is the one you're the most proud that you have?
I think I have an answer for all 3. It's the same thing. And I will also, right before I answer that, I'll say the thing that I want to be known for, I think, is the thing that I'm shooting for constantly, which is like dexterity. Dexterity and like eclecticism. Like, I really am proud of, right? I'm constantly trying to like get people to reconsider that which they think they know, you know, in music and acting. And I'm not saying I always succeed at it, but that is like the goal. Dexterity is like, you go right, I go left, and it just, I want it to, I just like the head turning thing, the confusion. There's like, my heroes are the ones that are known for one thing but did so many other things. And I know you just asked me another question, I'm going down a different rabbit hole, but I'm holding on to the thread.
Hey,
I'll go back to it. But I was gonna say, you know, like, my heroes are, you know, people like, you know, Anthony Newley, Mel Torme, like Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole. Like, so if I say Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole, you're like, oh yeah, of course, great singers. But I go, right, yeah, insane instrumentalist, yeah, really great showman. Sammy could do it all. Nat could do it all. And then I think of Mel Torme. People go, oh yes, of course, the Velvet Fog, like, great singer. I'm like, the dude was an insano muso, insane jazz drummer, unbelievable songwriter. And then Anthony Newley, who I think, you know, I think younger generations would know, but this is a guy that like Bowie really looked up to. He often cited, you know, if you listen to Anthony Newley records, you're like, oh my God, this is like who Bowie was trying to sound like. You know, he was like a standard singer. He was an actor. He did a ton of stuff, but namely, he was a writer, director, composer. So he had a lot of musicals: Stop the World, I Want to Get Off, War of the Grease Paint. These are shows that you might not know if you're not a musical theater nerd, but you might know some of the songs that he wrote for him. By the way, he directed and acted in these shows that he wrote for himself, and he's in the show. So one of these shows has a little song called Feeling Good that Nina Simone would cover and would become the standard that it is today. But he wrote Feeling Good. He won the Oscar for Goldfinger, for writing Goldfinger. He also wrote a little tune for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory called Pure Imagination. I mean, come on. Wow. Like, so this dude was just like, you know, every time I tell, you know, people who don't know about this guy, I just love the way they go, wow, I had no idea. Like, that's the stuff I pride myself on. And I use that as a segue to the stuff that I'm proud of. Like, you know, if somebody knows me as an actor, I'm really proud of the fact that I feel like I got here um, by large part because of like my songwriting
Mm-hmm.
and because of the things that had a bit more of a subcultural wave right before I had like a big more mainstream moment with Glee. But I'm really proud of the moments that the sort of unbridled songwriting moments I had in college that would kind of pave the way for having this insane like you know falling ass backwards down the rabbit hole moment with Glee. But my first kind of break was this theater company I started out of college called Star Kid, and this musical that I wrote the songs for with some buddies of mine called A Very Potter Musical, and
Yes, yes.
that was like the first time I'd ever been when I say recognized, I don't mean the literally like in the street, although that did happen. I mean being recognized for like being a songwriter, like people knowing
Yeah.
my songs, like showing up and people singing words and lyrics and playing chords that like I had written.
Yeah.
Like that was extremely validating and really exciting. And so that to me is some of the most proud moments that I've had because it was just for the love of the game and the love of your friends. And the metaphor I always use is like what happened with the Very Potter musical, which would, if people are listening to this and don't know what it is, you can like Wikipedia it. But it was this moment where it was just done for fun. Nobody's supposed to see it. And like a lot of viral videos, it just kind of happened naturally. It was just the lightning just went into the bottle, had no idea there was lightning or a bottle involved when we made it. And it just kind of is one of the purest forms of just making stuff for fun and it catching on. And the metaphor I was going to use is like if I threw a really great party my senior year of college and everybody was there and everybody you loved was there and there were famous moments and famous lines from that party, and it was just something that you had a really great time like at and reminiscing over with your friends, and then all of a sudden millions of people who you didn't know got to go to that part or like saw that party and were quoting
Right.
lines and wearing t-shirts from lines from that party, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe that so many people like also got to be at this party. So having said all of that stuff, I'll try and tie it back together with the three things that are the hardest, most rewarding, and most proud of, or think I forget what the third one was, but
That was it.
songwriting to me is sort of the amalgam of all of my skill sets. I think that's me firing off on all cylinders, especially songwriting for narrative specifically, um, because you're acting, right? So you're kind of acting slash play. You do this as a musician in the way that you can uh, filter your version of Mendelssohn, even though the notes are on the paper. Like you can have sort of carte blanche to do your own dynamics and translate your own thing into the experience of an audience listening to it. Like this is the stuff that really gets me excited. So if I know that there's a character who speaks a certain way, an actor who sings in a certain range, a moment in the script where they have to go from point A to point B, I can essentially paint by numbers and sort of architect the most maximum, the most maximalized, is that a word? Version of that experience. Like in the same way I like life hacking airport visits. I like puzzles.
Come full circle. I like it.
I like seeing all the pieces on the board
Yeah.
and seeing what is the most efficient, accessible, fun way to make this work for whoever is involved. That's like my general MO in life.
I could totally relate to that because I love live performing. I love touring, but I oftentimes joke that I love creative directing the show and planning it and making all like I love planning the show as much, if not maybe even a little bit more than actually doing the show, like figuring out how the costumes all tie together. What's the theme of this number? What are we going to dance like? What costumes, like how fast can we change? What's going to be the costume change moment? What's the set list? Like what's the props? Like finding the emotional arc. Like you said, it's all about, and also you said something interesting in the very beginning that you wanted to be known as a storyteller. And I say that too all the time. I'm like, more than being a violinist or, a dancer, whatever it is people seem to think I am, I feel like my greatest gift is being able to tell a story. And so that's why I love, like you were saying, connecting the dots of a show and planning moments and figuring out how this whole puzzle fits together. And that's how I always think of any sort of tour but I love that you do that with I mean, obviously you do that with your musical theater stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the songwriting thing to me that's really gratifying is like I look at the performing arts like a service industry, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I like serving my fellow human beings, you know, and
Yes.
it's like a calling. It's like a vocation, you know, to be able to you know, offer something bigger than all of us to the proverbial church of the world, the congregation of the world. Like
Yeah.
that is it's, you know, if I have the ability to do that, then it's like a calling to make it as like fun and groovy as I can do it. So when I have like a song to write for somebody, what's fun is it's not about like it's not an egotistical thing. It's like a team sport where I can hopefully assist a story and an actor and a performer like reach a point, you know, that will become more their own than mine. You know, like seeing a singer sing one of my things is so gratifying because it takes off in ways that I could have only imagined. I couldn't have imagined, and that's just like the funnest thing. And also, again, on a work level, it's gratifying because of the amount of things that it requires. You know, the musical know-how
Yes.
and obviously the technical know-how, but also making those choices. I mean, you were talking about, you know, the way you like to plan your shows, and I want to bring this to the violin. I'm going to turn this table around a little bit, where I think the way that you and I think about plotting out a show or a set list, or, you know, where things go, is the same mechanics that you would have playing the violin. And I
Mm.
often cite the violin as a really important touchstone in my life for a lot of things because of a couple really key components of playing the violin. One, there's a very small margin of error, or very
Yes.
large. I should say large. I'm trying to say that, like, there's no frets. There's no
Right.
like the level of precision is hyper specific. And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I guess I misspoke. The margin of error is large, so there's very little room for error, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
And violin and a lot of string instruments, you know, rely heavily on a deep understanding and skill of dynamics. And dynamics and dynamism is something that I am always looking out for, and in my own work and in other people's work, like the ebb and flow of things, how to swell, how to crescendo, how to forte, how to pianoforte, and knowing how to give and take in a given experience, whether it's in a 3-minute song, a 2-hour concert, or a 10-episode show. You have to know the sort of natural laws
Mm-hmm.
of dynamics. And I think the violin, without getting too like pedantic, I really think it did kind of unconsciously shape my attention to that kind of detail.
Interesting.
I think it also really shaped my ear. Like, I think I'm an okay singer, but I think my main skill that I have violin to thank is like my ear. And like I,
Yes.
you know, like I can play anything by ear, and this is like magic to people. But to me, it's like, yeah, in the same way that like dancers can just see a dance and just do it, you know, how like
Yes.
like that's magic. That's insane. How people can see a face and draw it. That is magic to me. Music, I hear it, got it, great, good. Like that's just how it works. And I think it has a
Right.
lot to do with the violin. And I don't know if you were a Suzuki kid. I
I
certainly
was just
was.
about to ask you that, especially with the ear comment. I'm like, yeah, you must have been Suzuki.
Oh, big time. I'm literally standing, only because I'm talking to you. I'm sitting with my violin in my hand in front of one of my pastimes over the break was not the break. Jesus. The pandemic. I shouldn't call it that. Just scratch that from the record. You guys know what I meant.
We'll edit it out
The
this
the
live.
the pause, the great pause. One of my
Yes.
big hobbies during the great pause was revisiting some of my old Suzuki books and
No way.
all my favorite Vivaldi. But because my right hand, my bowing has kind of betrayed me over the years, because I'm more of a guitar player now, I just sit here
Mm.
for hours doing. Wait on. Uh,
Oh my gosh, I know exactly. Yep. Yep.
I'm playing
Man,
it
see,
off,
I
but
need to get better pizzicato. That sounds amazing.
well, I should get a pick out. Then I'll be unstoppable. Um,
Right?
but yeah, I mean, that was when I realized it's like, you know, it's like It's like heavy metal, man. It's like tap. There's that one part on, what is it? It's gonna be out of tune. Forgive me, but
Yes.
I screwed that up. That's gonna sound horrible on the thing. You just tell you what, you can melodyne it, and you can just make those notes all perfect and pristine. But the point is, yeah, playing that stuff has really like reminded me of some of the, you know,
Yeah.
kind of musical foundations that really kind of started my artistic journey off at a pretty young age.
When did you start? How old were you?
I was 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reasons beyond my knowledge. I never saw somebody playing violin and said, "Oh, I want to do that." I think part of me, I was like I'm the younger brother. I think my whole life I've just wanted to impress the older kids, you know. And so I guess I always wanted to impress the adults around me. So I think maybe playing violin maybe made me sound somehow more adult and sophisticated. So bless my parents. I was like, "I want to play the violin." They went, "Okay." And
Oh,
and so
amazing.
I did. I had lessons until I was like 18. So I went off to
Wow. Yeah,
college.
that's amazing. So I didn't know you kept with it for like the whole deal like that.
Oh
I
yeah.
wanted to comment on something you said earlier too. You talked about that you see that the ability to create art is like a service. And I love that. And I feel like that is such a really important place for artists to get to, because otherwise, like, you either combat the nerves and the anxiety and everything that comes with being an artist. You either combat it by learning that you are giving a gift and a service, or you combat it with ego. Like, you have to combat it with something, I feel. Otherwise, like, you'll crumple under the pressure or the fear, or, you know, whatever it is that you're up against. And you know, that's something that recently has been kind of game changing for me as an artist, when I go into, whether it's a writing session, or especially after the pandemic, not having performed in over almost 2 years. Getting up on a stage was like so terrifying, and I kept going to the ego place in order to try to get up there and be confident, being like, I can do this, you know. I hope they like me, I hope I'm enough, I've worked hard, I've practiced, I got this. And I really had to switch my perspective to step on stage with the thought of, I am just here to give a gift. I've prepared all I can, and I hope that, you know, I'm grateful to be here. I hope that they enjoy it, but it's like my gift to give to them tonight. And that really did change everything and take me out of this downward spiral I was starting to go in, just doubting myself and all this, when I just switched to this idea of, this is a service and it's an honor and it's a gift. I have the ability, the beautiful ability to give. And so anyways, I love that you said that, you know, and you even mentioned like taking it out of ego, because that's where so many of us sometimes get stuck.
Yeah, I kind of am riffing off of something that I went to go see. Adam Driver, fabulous actor, fabulous human being. I don't know him personally, but he has a foundation, or I don't want to get this wrong, or an organization he's involved with, um, for active and it's active, and I forget what the word is. I don't want to say decommissioned, but when you've done your service in the
Yeah.
military. I forget what it is. Forgive me if anybody listening is active military. I don't have the nomenclature correctly, but men and women in the military that he puts on these like theatrical performances for free readings of plays and stuff. And he this is many years ago. He did a reading of one of my favorite plays called the Lobby Hero. It's a Kenneth Lonergan play, one of my favorite playwrights. And he just came out before the show to talk about you know, why he does this. And he was in the Marine Corps. He was in the military, and through a variety of circumstances had to come back. And I'm butchering the circumstances. I'm sure you could correct my recollection by looking it up online. But essentially, he said what I'm saying, which is, he's like, I looked at acting specifically because he left to go to Juilliard. He was in, I think he was in Afghanistan, and he came back to go to get his degree at Juilliard. And he said that he really gravitated towards theater because he had difficulty kind of readjusting to civilian life. And he really hammered this point that I really fell in love with, which was, you know, that acting and art was a public service, in that and there were similar constructs of the military that he felt were very in line with being an actor specifically, which was you have a team, and ideally you have there's rank. He joked that not all the time in an acting world is that clearly laid out, but for the most part on paper there is a sort of pecking order, and you just hope the people in charge are people that are worth following and good leaders and good people and all that stuff. But you're servicing something that is greater than yourself. It is a group effort, and you have each other's backs. And I'm kind of butchering this, but the way he spoke about it was so eloquent and very astute, I thought. And I really latched into that idea that you are creating something that's bigger than the sum of your parts.
Mm-hmm.
And you are doing a service for people outside of your task. And I'm trying. My brain is racking itself to try and remember if there's any other nuggets that he said, and I'm sure I'll think of it the second that we're done with this interview.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, there is
yeah.
it takes a lot of pressure off when you think of things in that way. Because I don't know, for example, when I go into a writing room, even for some reason, I put this undue pressure on myself to be what everybody thinks I am, or be what they hope I am, or, come up with something brilliant, not waste people's time, like all this pressure. And really that's so self-induced, and it comes from a place of, again, ego. And there's a lot of pressure that's taken off when you're just like, no, I'm here to like do my best and give a gift and be of service. And suddenly, like, it's just a completely different mindset that, I found that life is so much just about the lens that you view it through. And, you'll believe whatever you tell yourself. You'll believe that the pressure is real if you say it. You'll believe that it's chill if you say it. And so, like, if you're viewing your life through a lens of whether it's gratitude or service, or like, the idea that the world's out to get you and you're not enough, like, you will believe it. And that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like a preservation method. Like I have to believe that it is a service. Otherwise, like, what am I doing it for?
Right.
It's just an aimless ego trip, which is something that I just never felt like. I feel like there's this misconception that I've never liked, that if sometimes especially earlier in my career, there was this perception that if you're an actor on the stage or something that is in the spotlight, that you're the kind of person that seeks attention. And
Mm.
I was really bummed by that, because I've never wanted attention. And I can, again, there's a, who knows if I would say that if I didn't get it, like we're
Right.
like, that's something that is a skewed perspective, because there has been a spotlight on me at some points in my life. But I'm not somebody that needs the spotlight. What I long for is the ability, again, to give like a group of people a catharsis, like the kind of archetype of the guy playing guitar at the party when Belushi smashes the guitar, in Animal House. Like, as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, I never wanted to be the guy. I don't want people to say, "Hey, look at me, I'm playing guitar. All eyes on me. Here's something that I did." I am the guy that will always have the guitar ready. And the second someone says, "Darren, let's have a sing along," I'm effing there. I'm
Yeah.
there to make sure that everybody can have a fun time. And the second I feel like I've overstayed my welcome, or there's no additive value to me playing anything, then I'll stop. I don't need to rely on the guitar to get attention or affection. Like, if I need that, I'll just try and be like a nice person and have a nice conversation. But like, whatever kind of tricks we have up our sleeve, whether it's playing the violin or playing the guitar, like, these are things that I will gladly whip out if I know it is something that, or if I feel like the group genuinely wants it. And again, as a service thing, the second it's about me, then you're just like, it just feels gross and like pathetic, and
Yeah.
it isn't fulfilling in
Mm-hmm.
any way. So
So
yeah.
this brings up something I actually wanted to talk about. And it's a kind of different topic, but I'm curious how you see awards, especially based on the way you just described that perception, because in our industry, awards and perceived perception and accolades, it's so heavily like focused on, and it's something that is so quote unquote important. And it's just a really interesting thing if you like kind of peel back the layers and look at it. And I know that, you've received some amazing awards, and I'm never going to say that, nope, they don't matter, because I have received some awards, and then there's some that I didn't get, and I was very disappointed when I didn't get them. I was very excited when I did. Because of course we all, like, they mean a lot, But at the same time, like, what is your
Yeah,
perception of
it's a
that?
complicated answer, as you know. Like, speaking of the having an opinion about attention and spotlight, like you can have an opinion if you've been lucky enough to have it, right? So,
Yeah.
me saying anything about accolades, I've been lucky enough to somehow, galvanize enough people by hook or by crook, whether it was deserved or not, to somehow, have one wind up in my home. It is complicated. I think we do put a lot of pressure on these things, and people chase this stuff their whole life. I think I remember watching an interview with Matt Damon a while ago where he was saying he was so glad, he was relieved, because I think he got it for Good Will Hunting when he was like 24 or something absurdly young.
Hmm.
And he was saying that the next morning when he had it, he was just so pleased that he could like he can now, like, he doesn't have to chase this the rest of his life. He's like, I've
Mm.
done this, I'm good, I have it. Because it is a thing that will drive people mad, and it makes sense, but it's also absurd. They matter, but they don't matter, and you don't want to say that and be ungracious of what they mean. Like, there's
Right, right.
it's they're representative, they're symbols. Think of it like currency. Like, you know it's it's a symbol for a much larger thing,
Right. Well,
that
and also,
has a bureaucracy behind it, that has its own sort of you know pitfalls baked into the cake there's a lot of things that can be I'll remember I've also had similar situations where you were up for something and you didn't get it,
right.
and this might be a bit of a crass comparison, but I like my metaphors. I remember there was a moment where the first time I was ever in the category for like a major award, I didn't think there was a chance, but there's that second when you're sitting there where you kind of
Right.
build yourself up and you go, what if?
Yeah, I
and
could do
uh,
it.
and then by the time it's all over, you just feel like a chump for even thinking that you were like, for psyching yourself up for it. So there's so many weird mental games that go into that stuff, but I err on the side of they have value because they mean things to people, to the
Yeah.
artists and to the people around them. The bureaucracy of those things aside, they have value because they mean something. Like you said, you can just make yourself believe something. Like, if the world collectively believes that they have meaning, then they are. And I'm super, super, super grateful. Like, for me, one of the most gratifying things about having the run I did with the awards train was getting to accept something on behalf of all the people
Yes.
that work so hard, and like, I'm their horse. Like, they bet on me,
Hmm.
like hundreds of people, from like people, the stuff that I think people who aren't in the industry, when they see actors or musicians go, I just want to thank my team. And that might sound silly, but it's a team sport, man. It really is. And so getting
Right.
to have something to be like, guys, look what we all did together. And I'm talking like the crew on the show, the writers, all the people in the trenches that have done so much. Like, you become like the representative of the house of that project. And so if you have some kind of accolade, it's like a massive high five and congratulations to those people. So I think on that level,
Yeah.
it's something, with a great amount of value.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but
And I,
also the what last thing I'll say, sorry,
no,
is
go
that
on.
it doesn't mean that you're like the greatest of all time. It just means that at one point in time, at one serendipitous providential time in life, you and a group of people somehow managed to convince another group of people that you did a pretty good job that one time.
I love
you
that.
know it doesn't
Yeah.
mean it doesn't like stay forever. Your tenure is not infinite. It's like, just that one time you did a good job at that one thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't it's count for everything for the rest of the universe in perpetuity. It's like, no, you just, that one moment was pretty good.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good way to put it. And the way I think about it is, I think it can all be boiled down for me so much to that quote from okay, well
Of course, we're the
that
same
makes me
age.
like
That's
you
like,
anymore.
yeah, of course.
Well, there's this quote where, you know, they find out that their coach cheated in the Olympics and they're wondering, why would you cheat to get like a fourth gold medal? You know, you already had 3 or whatever he had.
Right.
And the coach says, my favorite movie quote of all time, he says, a gold medal is a wonderful thing, but if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. Like these
Right.
awards, these,
Yep.
like all of them, they
Yep.
are important. And like I said, I'm really proud of the ones I've won. And I feel so honored that, like you said, for that moment, you know, it was in my cards, and it was just the right place, right time, right song or whatever. You know, and for the ones I haven't gotten, it's important to also say I'm good and I'm fine with myself without it. And you know, and what you said about it being just a moment and it doesn't mean you're the greatest of all time, I think that that goes just as much for that as it does with our failures or our disappointments.
Totally. You're
Like
absolutely right. I couldn't agree more.
like
Yes.
that's how I got over some of my big, very public pitfalls in my career. Like, you know, back in the day when I was just humiliated on AGT, like that was my first time being like, I'm an artist. And, you know, I got X'd and practically booed off the stage. It was so humiliating. And it's easy for us to look at moments like that. And I almost did as like, well, obviously I'm not good enough. But then there's also the flip side of like, or maybe I wasn't good enough that night. Maybe I wasn't good
Yeah.
enough at that moment in my life. Maybe I had to work a little harder and find a different song or write better music. Like, but it doesn't mean that any moment in your life makes you either the greatest of all time or the worst of all time or not enough. Like, everything is just like, well, that was that night and it was great. I'm glad I lived it, or I'm sad I lived it. Moving on to the
Yeah,
next.
and the fickle mistress of the consumer audience, you know, which I that's a very specific
Mm,
descriptor, but I'll just say the human race. The human race is really, really phenomenally good at one thing that is really sad, but also very useful for those failures. We are extraordinary at forgetting.
yes.
We are like Olympic gold medalist forgetters. Like this happens, hundreds and thousands of years of history have shown just like how lousy we are at just remembering stuff. And despite our
Right.
best efforts to like, you know, maintain this stuff, we're phenomenal at adapting, but we're just slightly better at forgetting. So,
Mm,
you know, this can be really horrible and history repeating itself and really horrible things that have happened in, you know, recent and past history. But on a much more micro level for an artist, yeah, you had a bad run on a thing, you got humiliated, but guess what? You get back up, you do it again, and all you got to do is like do a good thing and everybody's back at you, like everyone's
right.
back, you know,
Everybody's back.
just hit that home run, no one's going to remember the last game, you know.
Totally. Well, I mean, I always tell myself, gosh, people are much more worried about themselves than they are about my latest performance or anything I'm doing, whether it's like my own social life or my performer life or my art, like whatever. It's like people are so, that's why we forget things so easily, is because we're so consumed in our own little bubble. We just don't have the attention
Right.
span to remember everybody else's bubble. Like, so there's a lot, it's
But you
another,
know, back to the freedom of you know, not being able to control how people look at you, this is kind of tied to that freedom where
yeah,
it's like I remind myself that like, look, we're not, I mean, there are people that I genuinely do feel bad for, like the big most famous people on the planet with like, you know, everybody's following them. Like, you and I've done well, we're not those people. We
exactly.
we
Yes.
we don't have to like
What?
worry about, how dare you, we don't have to worry about things to the degree, because like meanwhile when we're preoccupying ourselves with like our own stuff, it's like people have so much other stuff to look at that I always go,
Right.
I don't have to flatter myself. Like, who cares? Like, I'm such a like I'm such a small part of like such a huge, huge, endless like labyrinth of stuff for to people to pay attention to, and
Right.
that, you know, like we all get stuck in our own echo chambers, whether you're an artist or not. That's one of the main things that
Absolutely.
I fear for social media is like if you're a 19-year-old or a 46-year-old with a social media account, you have kind of this curated version, this avatar version of yourself that you think the entire world is involved in. And it's sort of misrepresentative of like your actual life in the world, because you get consumed with how people are interacting with that person and not your own person. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a disparity, and that kind of disparity can really tear people up. And you know, I think we have more practice and more calluses and more, you know, resilience with that disparity, because we have to do this professionally. But it is a strange thing that, yeah, you can get caught in the echo chamber of what you think. Oh, you hear this? What everybody's saying about my thing? It's like, no, not everybody. Just like a few people on your thing in your tiny room. Like, let me know when it's on the front page of the New York Times. Like, I think you're okay. It's not everywhere.
Well, even so, you know, it's funny you say the New York Times. The first article that was ever written about me in anything prestigious at all was the New York Times. And I remember a friend forwarded it to me being like, congrats. And I was so excited, but the friend didn't open the article and read it.
Oh no. Did I just like strike a chord that I totally missed?
No, it was this, but then again, nobody remembers it. And it was in the New York Times, and it was a very unflattering article of, you know, about me as an artist, and like how, you know, anyways, all just very unflattering and very disparaging.
Was it on the front page? I shouldn't have said New York Times.
Actually, it wasn't on the front page, but it's
okay, good.
Funny that, like you said, no one remembers that. I'm sure none of my fans ever even read it, you know, but at the time I was just devastated, you know, but it's so true that it's like, we don't, you know, tell myself sometimes, don't flatter yourself. Like, people don't care that much. No one really noticed. No one really, because, you know, anyways, it's just an interesting and refreshing place to come back to sometimes, to remind yourself that, you know, like you said, I'm not Kim Kardashian. Thankfully, I don't have that many people judging my every move. And most of us don't.
Yeah. Also, like, it's something that I like to remind people is that, you know, being an artist is an absurd idea. Like, it's not a great idea. It's you're putting yourself on a chopping block that most normal, healthy people are not equipped to uphold. It's a really hard, crazy thing. And so when you have moments like that, it's just like it's the price of admission to like the life of an artist, and if anything, to the life of a successful artist. You know, if I want to go take it back to my man Sammy Davis Jr., he used to say, like, you know, if they're not talking about you, then they don't give a damn. So it's like, you know, it's a give and a take, man. But again, you know, we wouldn't have it any other way. And that's still pretty cool. You're in the New York Times. Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, you were in the New York Times, you know?
It's true. It's true. Well, you know, I've had your attention for the last hour. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. And you are so smart. I can just tell by the way you express yourself. I'm like, dang, I mean, I knew you were smart, but like, you were very, very, very smart. And anyways, it was really fun to just listen to you talk through all these really in-depth concepts. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's fun to get into. I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like I'm acting like I'm smart and articulate. And that's why I busted out the Vivaldi. And I'm sitting here kicking myself going like, oh, I could have done that better. I have to go practice this now.
Hey, I thought it was great. I knew exactly what you were playing. I was like, I remember that one.
Isn't that cool when you meet other Suzuki kids? I'll sing, you know, like Bach double or something. And then sit. I can't tell you the amount of bars I've been in where like somebody will talk about Suzuki and somebody will go da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then like somebody will come in on the second violin.
It's the second violin.
Yeah, it's the nerdiest thing.
Oh, I love being a nerd. Well, before you go though, I want you to just talk really quickly, like tell people about some of the exciting things you're doing, because I was actually just listening to it this week when I found out I was interviewing you. But your new EP, Masquerade, it's really cool.
Thank you. You know, I had finally, music is something that I always, you know, I'm a musician. What can I say? And I've been lucky enough to have a bit of streak of luck with acting stuff. So with the great pause, I finally had time to put out music that I've been sitting on for a while. So so I put you know, I put some tunes out that I thought were kind of fun, and we were talking about, you know, representing yourself, to bring it back full circle to the beginning of like showing up for versions of yourself that you want people to know you for. That's definitely while it's a big piece of that, a big piece of contributing to that conversation, it's but a small part of the iceberg. You know, I think there's much more that I need to get into and would like to get to and have intentions of getting into. So I finally got to put that out. I mean, I done made myself a Christmas record. That's been a long time coming, just because my last name's Criss. Wait, and I've been wanting to do this forever. It comes out in October 8th.
Oh my gosh.
But I've been kind of in promo mode for that, and I've been recording that all year.
Like I've spent years literally working on Christmas material, because I've done, you know, I did a Christmas album and then prepped for Christmas tours and then film all the music videos.
Yeah,
so
you know,
I'm sure you've spent the last year kind of in Christmas mode.
It's been Christmas all year. 2021 has been a very Darren Christmas, as is the name of the album. Did you enjoy it? Like, yeah, of course.
Christmas all year?
Well, because for you, I mean, like, look, if you're a recording artist that makes, you know, at some point someone says, you know, do you want to make a Christmas record? And like, for the past, I don't even know, God, like 10 years of my life, it's been like, yeah, obviously, like when I have time, there's just other things that take priority. And, you know, again, nothing like the great pause to make you go, okay, well, how about now?
Oh, I'm so excited to hear your Christmas. Is it called Darren Christmas?
It's called A Very Darren Christmas, yeah, which
Oh
is
my
kind of a nod
gosh.
to a very obvious pun, but also a Harry Potter musical. You know, it's a very blank
Yes.
blank is sort of the
It
name
all
of the
makes
game.
sense. It all works.
Yeah,
I
it's all
love
tied
it.
together. Yeah, so that, and then I have sort of what we've been doing, but I have this weekly podcast with my friend Esty Hyam of the band Hyam, if you know them.
Yes, yeah.
We talked to, because she's primarily known as a musician who studied like acting and theater her whole life, and I'm kind of the opposite, where I primarily known as an actor that studied music my whole life. So yeah, so we kind of talked to multi-hyphenates like yourself, Lindsey Stirling. We may have to sneak you in on that pod, but we do that every week, and just the general upkeep of life, man. And but I've just been in music mode because that's been sort of the name of the game. Yeah, you know,
busy.
Yeah, my joke to people, even though this isn't entirely true, is it's been high output, low visibility, which I feel is like everybody's pandemic. You know, you spend an entire day on emails doing stuff and taking care of your family and being a human being. Like, we're not even mentioning the day-to-day, you know, minutia of being a person on the planet. Like, that's all this stuff. You spend all this time doing stuff, and people are like, what are you up to? And you're like, so much, but nothing you would necessarily know or care about.
Right. I know. I always kind of hate that question when they're like, so what's next? Or what are you working on? You know, and I'm like, unless I have a project that I'm really proud of, the answer is like, I'm just busy working it.
Like, I don't know, like trying to paint my kitchen, organize like, you know, closet, like a lot of things that take a lot of time and energy, but it's not necessarily the answer people.
Yeah, they want the 5-year plan every time they ask you that question. You're like, I'm just trying to make it through tomorrow, sir, but
yes.
I'm like, I just released an album. Please do not ask me what is next. I'm exhausted, you know. Or
yeah, next is pushing this album. But to be fair, you know, pushing the Christmas album and pushing to play those places, you know. And then, you know what, I was doing I'll end it with this. I was doing a play right before the shutdown. I was doing American Buffalo on Broadway with some of my favorite actors. I was, you know, Sam Rockwell and Lawrence Fishburne. Let me just pick up those names I just dropped on the floor. We were doing American Buffalo, great American play, and you know, kind of a stalwart classic for theater people. So that's one of those, you know, much like playing the greats. Again, if you're going to play, I don't know, the Four Seasons, like the hits, you know, as a violinist, like this is one of those like hit plays as an actor you always want to do. So we shut that down in February of last year. Oh my God, 2 years ago now. But well, 1.5 years. So hopefully we'll be going back to that in the winter or spring of 2022. Fingers crossed. But those are all the things in the fire. But who knows what else will pop up? You know, life is a funny way of making other things happen when you're, you know, to quote another person, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. I think John Lennon said that.
Right.
So anyway, well, I'll just ramble on forever. I should let you go.
No, Stirling. It's been so delightful to talk to you. And again, everybody really go listen to Darren's new music. I had a lot of fun listening to Masquerade. By the way, ironically, the last musical project, well, it was just a song, but the last song I released was called Masquerade. Isn't that ironic?
It's a great word. It's a great word.
It's a good word. I mean, you know, anything to wear a fun costume, I'll do. So
I mean, we wear masks for a living. You know, we put on different costumes to be different versions of ourselves. It's very appropriate and very much tied into this conversation and the things that we do in life. So I'm glad that we both subscribe to the idea of a masquerade, because it's all just a masquerade ball, isn't it, Lindsey Stirling?
And that is a perfect way to end. I love it.
It's great to chat with you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Too. Everybody, thanks for being here. By the way, that we had a nice full room the whole time, so thanks for joining us. And
thanks for joining us, guys,
for more audio rooms, and also go check out Darren's podcast too.
Yeah, that thing I do, but whatever. Check this one out first. This is you know, we gotta kiss the ring here. Thank you for having me. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you everybody for joining me. This was lovely.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Bye everyone.
Bye, guys.